Så du kommer in.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. here in Sweden, so we will start. Welcome to the conference supporting eco-innovation across Europe. My name is Sigrid Jansson, and I work at the County Administrative Board in Östergötland in Sweden, and I am the project manager and lead partner of the super project that is hosting this event. With me here today I have...
So welcome, my name is Olof, a professor at Linköping University.
And welcome to all of you. My name is Kanda, senior lecturer in Linköping University.
Okay. So before I start all the presentations, I will go through some practical issues. When you enter the meeting, you notice there was a question about recording, and I want to inform you that this event is recorded, and you will be able to see it afterwards as well. I will also like to remind you to have your microphones muted at all times. If you do have some questions for the presenters, you can write them in the chat that we will monitor. And every question you have, write them in the chat. We have a very tight schedule today, as you might have noticed in the agenda, but we will try to answer as many questions as we can. You might also have noticed that there was a question to go to Menti when you enter the meeting to answer a question. We will use Menti at the end as well, and you will get the code and instructions as we go along. As an introduction to the topic of the event and also to the project, I will show you a short video.
Every day, people and companies around the world innovate. Some are sustainable, so-called eco-innovations, and solve environmental problems. Some are not. New technologies, products and services affect us all and will play an important role in achieving the global sustainable development goals for the year 2030, set by the United Nations Development Programme. 10 European regions have formed a network which helps environmentally aware companies become more successful and successful companies to become more environmentally aware. Together with local business developers, we focus on the global goals on industry, innovation and infrastructure, and responsible consumption and production. The world is full of good examples, like the Lithuanian engineering company SVA, which develops the collect and reflect thermal window blind, which reflect the sun's heat in the summer and collect it in the winter. Or the Swedish energy company Againity, which turn excess heat into cheap and sustainable electricity with their innovative turbine technology. And the Irish company PGE, which develops a technology for conversion of waste into renewable electricity, combined with carbon recovery in the form of a solid product. Innovators who want to develop sustainable ideas can get help with funds and loans, but also with expertise in, for example, marketing, communication, internationalization, and business development. They can also be put in touch with people and organizations who can help them develop even further. We want to help ideas lift off and grow, because we believe that innovation is the key in overcoming many of the challenges we face, both today and tomorrow. Do you have an idea which can contribute to a sustainable world? Or maybe you want to make your company more eco-innovative? Contact your local business development agency for more information, or visit our website.
Okay. Okay, that was a short introduction to eco-innovation and the project as a whole. So in the project, we have focused on eco-innovation and how we can help companies to be more eco-innovative. But how do you define eco-innovation? This is the definition we have chosen to use in the project. It's a very broad definition, and it says that a project or service innovation that causes a significant decrease in environmental impact while remaining economically feasible and not being in conflict with social sustainability. What matters most is the actual environmental benefits that arises through the development and diffusion of such innovation with or without intention. In the Super project, we are 10 regions across Europe that together have worked for 5 years on exchanging experiences and on how to help companies to be more eco-innovative. The overall aim of the project has been to support eco-innovations towards international markets. The focus has been on the needs of the SMEs and how the business and innovation support system can develop and adjust to these needs. We have discussed and investigated questions such as what support do companies need, where do they seek support today, and does the support system have enough knowledge to help the SMEs to be more eco-innovative? We want to develop the regional innovation support system based on these needs that we have identified. Our long-term goal is to make environmentally friendly companies more successful and successful companies more environmentally aware. I will give you a short summary of the activities that we have done within the project. We started by mapping the support system in each partner region. And by doing so, we identified the actors and their position in the system. Then we moved on to actually talk to the SMEs and interviewed about 140 companies around Europe. Then we went to the support system and did a self-assessment. The self-assessment tool was developed by our advisory partner, Linköping University, and they will talk more about the methodology behind that tool later. But in general, it was about to identify strengths and weaknesses in the regional support system. We have also identified good practices in each region that can be transferable to other regions in Europe. And all of this led to action plans. All partners have written an action plan for their own region with recommendations and planned actions for each region based on the learnings from the project. These plans have been implemented and monitored for the last 18 months, and you will get some practical examples of what the partners have done later in the agenda. With that said, I once again want to welcome you to the conference, and now I will hand it over to Aleksandra from the Interreg Europe Joint Secretariat, who will give us some more information about the Interreg Europe program and also some reflections on the results of our project. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking for the invitation here. I am here and I'm Aleksandra, I'm the finance officer of Super. And there's also in the audience my colleague Etienne, who is the policy officer of the project. We are very happy to be here with you, even if it's just in this virtual form. Well, what can we do? We do our best. So we are happy to see you all here, even if it's through the computer screen. We have prepared a small presentation that I will now share with you. This is this one. It's a really short one. The presentation is quite short. We just wanted to give you the state of play of the Interreg Europe program. And then just as Sigrid said, say a few words on Super and what makes it a great project. So for those of you, most of you are probably familiar with Interreg Europe, but for those of you who are maybe not so acquainted with us, we have had 4 calls up to date, and in these 4 calls we have approved 258 projects. which translates into 322 millions of funds granted to these projects. We are a pan-European program, so we have partners from 30 European countries, 30 EU countries, plus Norway and Switzerland. And we are very happy to be able to say that almost 90% of our program area NUTS 2-level regions are represented in our projects. We have 2,000 partners, so it's a huge amount, and 25% of these partners are managing authorities. And if we take into consideration the stakeholders of the projects that are involved in project activities, this number is even more important. What are we doing in our program? And when I say we, I mean you, the projects. Up until the 1st of November 2020, more than 3,000 good practices have been identified. Out of these more than 3,000 good practices, more than 1,100 good practices have been validated by our experts and are available and published in our good practice database. They can be consulted by other projects, Interreg Europe projects, but also by externals. You know that we are a capacity building program, so the next indicator is a very important one for us. It's staff with increased capacity. So you can see that 12,000 persons with increased capacity have been reported to us from the projects. And another indicator that I wanted to mention is the action plans that were developed. Sigrid mentioned that all of the regions, the partners, have developed their action plan in your project, and in total, the projects who have finished phase one in our program have submitted 920 action plans. So you can see from the slide that with a bit more than a half of projects that have finished phase one, we have almost achieved the planned target, the target that we planned in the cooperation program. So we are very happy about this. But why are we doing this? What are the effects of your activities, of your cooperation in the regions? So we are doing this to improve policies, and you see that more than 440 policy changes, so either policy improvements or policy influences, have been reported up to now. So for the projects who have managed these changes, the financial impact exceeds 700 million euros. And this exceeds our program budget. So this means that over 700 million euros have been mobilized in the regions for implementing the lessons learned from the cooperation. So we have already reimbursed more than we cost to the EU citizen. And when looking at these numbers from the leverage effect perspective, we can see that for €1 invested in these projects, €4 in a way went back to the region. So all this shows the usefulness of cooperation, the usefulness of what you are doing in your regions. I've been talking a lot about the projects, but we also have a second pillar to our program, which is the policy learning platform. The goal of the platform is twofold. One is to foster cooperation between the existing projects, and the second is to kind of open the knowledge, the experience that you have gathered to externals. So we have this community of peers where the projects, the members of the projects can register, but also externals, and we have already over 18,000 members. I have mentioned a good practice database in which 1,933 good practices have been validated by our experts. 7 of these good practices are super practices. So congratulations. We know that this is hard work. So this is hard work of the entire project that led to such a nice result. And maybe one more service of the platform that I would like to say a few words about is the peer reviews, which is now our star product of the platform. These are in case a region or managing authority has identified a specific challenge, they can apply for a peer review with us. There's an open call for peer reviews. And then a community of peers meets together with the platform experts for 2 days. Now it is happening online due to the circumstances, and discuss this issue and come up with a solution for this particular specific problem. So the application is much easier than and simpler than for a project. So in case you still have some challenges in your regions and you haven't tackled them in an Interreg Europe project, please visit our website and where you can learn more on how to maybe apply for a peer review with us. We have had up until October, I think 16 peer reviews that have happened. And we know from the feedback that this service is really appreciated by the managing authorities who participate. I mentioned just briefly the fact that the peer reviews are now happening online. The reason is the epidemic. We cannot not mention this situation because, as you can imagine, Interreg Europe was this epidemic is a big challenge for Interreg Europe, as our activities mainly focus on meeting, exchanging, seeing the solutions implemented in other regions. So we were very heavily impacted by the crisis, by the fact that we cannot travel, we cannot see each other. But we haven't given up, and we have proposed several measures to help our project partners and to help our community. So first of all, there's an open call for good practices related to COVID-19 and how to mitigate the effects of the crisis. So you can check what other projects are doing or other regions are doing. Or if you have any interesting results, you can also share them there with us and the community. We have been organizing, and we will continue doing so, webinars on different topics that will maybe inspire you in the way you're dealing with the challenges. You can also contact the Policy Learning Platform Help Desk to request some support from the experts. And you probably also know that we have come up with some measures for each call of our projects to support them to go through the crisis. And we are also all the time in contact with our projects to try to also adapt the measures to their particular needs. So in case you want to know more about these measures, I invite you again to go to our website. You cannot miss it. It's very well advertised on our website. Enough about Interreg Europe. Let's speak about Super in a few short slides, because I expect that I'll hear more from the next speakers about the very interesting results that you have been achieving through cooperation in your project. So Super, as you know, is one of 53 projects working on innovation delivery. So it's part of TO1. There are 12 projects in innovation infrastructure and 53 in innovation delivery under TO1. And Super has this specificity that it's working on one hand on eco-innovation and on the other hand on companies, on SMEs. So this is an interesting approach that you're helping the companies to become more innovative and greener, but through this you also help them to increase their competitiveness, and not only in the region but also in the foreign market. So this is a really interesting perspective, we think. So I mentioned already 7 good practices that you have validated in our good practice database. So this already shows the value of your cooperation and the potential that our experts see in your ideas to also inspire other policymakers, not only within your project, but also outside. But you have already reported some results, some improvements in policy changes. So 4 policy changes, 3 of them are improved governance, and 1 is there are 2 projects, new projects being funded. And you can see from the slides that these changes have been reported by Lithuania, Poland, Netherlands, and Sweden. We already congratulate you for this very nice result. And this is not the end, because we are still expecting your last progress report. So we assume that we'll have some more information about your achievements. I wanted to finish by giving you a short update of what's happening in Interreg Europe when it comes to the future program. Just in a few words, I don't have a lot that I can say to you right now. So you might know that in May 2018, we were all surprised to discover that Interreg Europe was not present in the EC draft regulation. But thanks to the European Parliament and the Council, who have asked for Interreg Europe to be back, in May last year, we were brought back to the regulations, to the draft regulations. And thanks to this, we could start the programming process of the new Interreg Europe. We continue having programming committee meetings. We just had a programming committee last week. We will have a next one in December. Well, we are having them, but of course we need to wait for the finalization of the regulation and obviously the budget decisions that are still to be taken. But we can tell you already now a few give you a few pieces of information about the new program. So we will continue to be pan-European. We will have a similar overall objective and the same core target groups. And we will also still focus on capacity building. So the key features of the Interreg Europe program will remain. What we propose to change, let's see what the programming committee will decide in the end. It's to focus, to lighten the focus of on the structural funds. You remember that in Interreg, in this programming period, there had to be 50. The requirement was to have a minimum of 50% of the policy instruments addressed to be structural funds programs. And now we want to be more flexible and lift this requirement. And there is a proposal to have just one structural fund program obligatory in the application form. The member states are also interested in making more pilot actions. So we are also considering to making it possible to have pilot actions in phase 1 of our project. And the last change that I wanted to mention is that we are planning to have only one single priority in the program, focusing on capacity building, as opposed to what we had now. We had four priorities, which kind of limited us to these 4 priorities. And having this one single priority focus on capacity building will allow us to, and the projects, to tackle all the topics covered by cohesion policy. So this is it from me. Just before I finish, I would like to take this opportunity, this rare opportunity that I have also all the project partners in front of me, because normally we're in touch only with the lead partner. And I want to really, on my behalf and also on Etienne's behalf, to thank you very much for all the hard work that you have been doing. I have been with Super from the beginning. Etienne joined a bit later, but we really appreciate your hard work. It's a really good project, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. It's been a pleasure. We really appreciate the involvement of the lead partner with whom we have been working, and the cooperation with the lead partner was exceptional. But we also know that behind this are also the partners who are very involved. So I take this opportunity to thank Sigrid and the team, but also the entire team of the project. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Aleksandra. And thank you to both you and Etienne for all your support during the last couple of years. I enjoyed working with you too, so thank you. Next up is our keynote speaker, Ken Webster. He is director of the International Society for Circular Economy, guest researcher at Linköping University, and MacArthur Foundation Associate, among other things, I might say. So welcome, Ken. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. I assume you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to run through a short presentation which explores some of the relationships between circular economy and eco-innovation as, if you like, a way of zooming out a bit in the discussion, but giving opportunity for people to pick up on things which might be of interest. So if that's all right, I will share screen here and proceed. Yes. I think I am co-host. Is that okay?
Yes, great.
Okay. I'm also at present working at the University of Exeter. That is until the end of this current year, and that's in the business school. So let's just recap who I might be and why. Well, it doesn't give you a reason why you should listen to me, but I'm very grateful for the invitation, and I think there are enough cross-linking threads to make this a fruitful area for discussion. I was very much involved with the MacArthur Foundation since its inception until 2018. I'm still an associate of the MacArthur Foundation, and their mission, in a way, was to enable the umbrella notion of a circular economy to be reframed in the West. It had been quite common in China and elsewhere, and had its roots back into the 1990s, at least in Europe. But the reason for doing it was to, well, we'll come to that. The circular economy has a number of interpretations, and I think this is actually a strength. And you will immediately see how it relates to your own work in eco-innovation, I hope. But I'm just going to counterpoise each of these things. Right, first of all, circular economy. Well, is it about changing the logic of how the economy works? And you notice the word economy. It's not really just about what a particular business does. It has some flavor for Nyland, the Finnish researcher, of the logic of the economy. Brennan, however, just has it as a general term, covering all of the activities that reduce, reuse, and recycle materials. So it's really, well, that would be spot on in a way towards eco-innovation. Walter Stachel, one of the original writers on all this, makes a very keen point that it's an economic opportunity based on innovation. It's not designed to reduce environmental impact. That's not its main lead. The main lead, he suggests, is as an economic opportunity, because if we do things differently, you will also be able to reduce the impact on the environment. And I think that's an interesting counter position. It's where these things start from. Circular economy starts very much, according to a number of the writers, from economic opportunities. Now, how does this happen? Well, perhaps my own thoughts on this, if it was a throwaway line, is just digital meets business models meets design. And what sort of design? Well, we'll get to that. Now, eco-innovation, the quotations I've been given, that might be most relevant to this project, as you will see. You're quite familiar with all of this. It is driven by reductions in resource use while keeping a business able to work profitably. And the key line in the second extract is with or without intention. Let's explore more of this journey, because I think there may be some, if not tensions, at least useful ideas around this that don't quite match up perfectly. Now, this is just some of the history of the development of a circular economy as an umbrella concept. Let's pick up on that one. And you can see most of the schools of thought that have had a big influence, everything from natural step through industrial metabolism, cleaner production, stuff like cradle to cradle. McDonough and Braungart are going to particularly pick up on that. And there seems to be a turning point around 2012, according to these researchers. And we can illustrate this through the amount of, or where the amount of articles produced and where they come from. Prior to 2012, most of the articles were derived from, the published academic papers were from China, and they dealt with very largely industrial ecology as a characterization. Between 2013 and 2020, a huge expansion in the number of papers, peer-reviewed, published, and where they are coming from has equally expanded out. So if you like, there's been a reframing, a repositioning of circular economy around 2012. Now, I think I'm pretty confident that some of this had to do with the way in which the MacArthur Foundation reframed or synthesized existing ideas. So let's just dive into that a little bit. Here's the intuitive overview. You're super familiar with this, I would imagine, except it's got a couple of features in here that probably are less discussed. Many of the times that the linear economy is discussed in terms of energy and materials, and with its emphasis on that set of relationships. However, there's also plenty of evidence to say that the monetary system fuels this process of extraction, and it is really quite key to the potential for it to be reworked so that it allows us to have industrial and production and consumption processes that meet some of the aspirations of the SDGs. So we don't quite know what a money and finance cycle should look like in a restorative circular economy. But we do have these clues, according to most people's understanding, that the shift is towards obviously renewables and efficiency in energy, plus 2 cycles. This is derived from cradle to cradle, the idea that we might have a biological nutrient pathway for materials and a technical one. The difference being is the technical cycle, it depends upon human intervention to recover the order or recreate the order of those materials, whereas in the biological cycle, this is done by living systems. But it's quite important, a difference. And what did this research find out that was looking at the history of circular economy? Were there some propositions that were pretty much common to much of the discussion? And I think this is useful. It's all about narrative under number 1 there, CE, circular economy. It's a narrative capable of inspiring policy actions. And it was, in a way, shaped that way at the beginning of the decade 2010. And it's evoking a social technical transition. And it is around innovative industrial systems, which would include businesses. And lastly, I think this is more important, and it's useful to look at some of these tensions. The researchers suggest it contributes through an eco-effectiveness approach to industrial systems. Now, that's not just an eco-efficient one, and the roots of this are around the discussion that Braungart Madonna had 20 years ago and continue to have about the difference between eco-efficiency and eco-effectiveness. And it is a more systemic approach. It isn't so much about the business as the business within the ecosystem, if you like, which contributes to an economy of both materials and monetary cycles. So circular economy, the little extract at the bottom there, is powerfully attractive to business community and policy making. So all to the good, I would think, if we're just happy with it as a circular economy as a broad view. Janusz Potocznik is very bold here, and this is part of this, if you like, not just the mythology, but the aspiration in a way. The aspiration for Janusz is that it might be capable of delivering decoupling of economic growth from resource use. And part of that bigger picture of transformation needed to deliver the SDGs. So for him, it's a toolbox, if you like, a toolbox towards this further aim of delivering SDGs, but as firmly rooted in jobs and growth and decoupling as a notion, which is fine. If that's Janusz's view, IPEA in Hamburg, part of Dries & Sumner now, but originally Michael Braungart's consultancy, think about the circular economy as a nutrient economy. And at the core of it is this biological and technical cycle notion. And that is because in their sort of words, or is very commonly put out, the waste is food. In other words, anything going through the system ought to be able to be identified in terms of what's in it, but also what's next. So the boundaries of this are not whether it reduces an impact on the environment. That's a waste minimization reflection. What they might say, and do say quite strongly, is if you've got any so-called waste, it should be food for another part of the system. And that's what makes the difference between just being efficient and then effective. The shift is very clearly in terms of a root metaphor. The circular economy as a nutrient economy takes insights from living systems, and so do many of the earlier writers on circular economy. J.T. Lyle would be an example, Gunter Pauli, as I say, McDonough and Braungart, to some extent Amory Lovins in Natural Capitalism. So why are they so hooked up on this? I think in a way that this is the crucial testing ground, this difference between eco-efficiency and eco-effectiveness. And I think one of their arguments might be, let's just take the scale and sale sort of notion. In a linear economy, we work on large scale very, very often. We want to get capital. We want to add more capital and reduce labor, lower the costs of each unit produced, quite familiar. But we know very well that much of this activity spins off these issues at the end there, because there is a continual pressure in a production orientated system to make sure the product is sold, because it's highly efficient, if you like. It's efficient in the production of low cost materials and products. So being more efficient in that is a way of cutting down or reducing the impact. We all know that. But you can look at these things differently. And I know this might be part of the mix that you work with quite frequently, but it is quite a profound shift. For example, I mean, Walter Scharfel talks about this a lot, about that shift to access over ownership. And it has a number of reinforcing characteristics. You might be working on a smaller scale, and you would have the cost of each unit produced is quite high, and it might contain more materials or more robustness than you might expect if you were chasing efficiency in the traditional way, because you want to get extended product life out of it. So it isn't about putting the least in there, it's about putting the most appropriate to suit the business model here, because there are reinforcing pluses to this approach. And it's much about the systemic relationships. If you were to achieve this sort of approach with significant durables, we would do two things, and one of them is quite, I think, almost cynical. But let's just put it on the table anyway. In an era of low growth, when many of the markets are saturated for significant durables, with just a replacement thing, and the demographics, an aging population in most OECD countries, quite severely aging, they don't buy so much stuff, and you've got climate change and other constraints, it would be in a business's interest to try and capture the attention and loyalty of customers by being able to not sell more, which is really, really difficult, but by able to translate the selling of stuff into the selling of services. So it's tied in quite another way. In other words, we would be able to say, instead of profits accruing to ever more production, it will be accruing to perhaps the dominance or control of significant market sectors by putting products into service comprehensively in this sort of way. So it would help, if the pie is not going to grow, it helps business potentially to get more of what existing pie is there. And you also do great things for the environment potentially. Now back to the EU. Well, the EU is looking at it in this way, in the action plan for 2020, and it's a much, you'd expect it, it's a much more practical approach, shall we say, rather than thinking the big picture things I've just been running through. But these are the areas they want to deal with: waste policy, yes, enhancing circularity, secondary materials markets, designing sustainable products, which is what you're into within the eco-innovation area. But they are basing a great deal of their European Green Deal on adopting a circular economy as part of its core element. And I think that's worth logging as an encompassing framework. Now, in a way, you can always test whether something's got some traction to it by how far and how quickly the consultancies jump in on it. And this is an example from Accenture. They're seeing much of the potential way of adding value around digitally enabled approaches. So this would be, if you like it, innovative approaches around sharing platforms, product as a service, and product use extension. And there's less emphasis in terms of viable business models on circular inputs, but it's interesting all the same that digitally enabled business models can be quite different and achieve good outcomes while potentially reducing environmental impact. But some of the problems, I want to get back to this tension very quickly. This is a familiar sort of diagram. I'm wondering if this has anything much to do with the circular economy. It really talks to me about efficiency, waste minimization. It's focused on the technical products side of it. And, it's like the list from MacArthur Foundation, the resolve list. Once you start taking a list, you lose the systemic input into this. For instance, the criteria on the left are fewer natural resources and less environmental pressure. Well, yeah, great. You can do that just with being much more eco-innovative and working with eco-efficiency. So keeps coming back to what Braungart Madonna here characterizes the difference between waste minimization, or minimize the negative impact. Very, very well established. Look at that through life cycle analysis. Whereas being eco-effective, and this is, I think, what makes it very attractive, is that can we do it so that we leave a positive footprint, not just trying to minimize an existing economy's impact, but trying to rethink how we do things by using insights from living systems. And I promise something around scale. There is a suggestion that behind the circular economy, or behind many of the initiatives you're involved in, or more broadly, that there is this concern to begin to look with a much more systemic approach. And if you take on systems thinking, if you take on insights from living systems, you will begin to naturally think about interrelationships rather than defined boundaries to things, you begin to look at different scales. Now, this is something I wanted to get into, because if the circular economy in its eco-effective mode takes insights from living systems, it will also have to take account of what scale looks like, not only just in living systems, but in all of these dynamic flow systems. And let's characterize it this way. On the diagram on the left, this is work from quotation below, it's Sally Gerner and people. In these flow networks, this one was around data flow in banking, actually, but they do it with a number of other areas. All of these systems indicate a trade-off between efficiency and resilience. And it's not a trade-off you can have one or the other, in the sense that there is a trade-off if you want to be effective. In other words, if you want to work in a way like real-life ecosystems do, there's always an interplay between the move towards efficiency and the move toward resilience. Efficiency means fewer nodes and connections. Resilience means more nodes and connections. The interplay is hugely important. On the right-hand side, there's something from a living system you can get a sense of the more efficient pathways, and the ones which are more around resilience, which are the ability for the system to take damage. It's a bit like our capillaries in our bloodstream, blood connection. They can take the damage, they can be, blood can be rerouted and allow the tissue cells to repair. If it's a very bad problem with the efficient part of the bloodstream, it's usually good night Vienna in that sense. So the argument is that we need to be able to work on all scales with this, and that the systems have different characteristics. Picking up on this diagram, perhaps we've been thinking too much about greater efficiency and streamlining, but we're too little towards diversity and interconnectivity and enabling people to add value with what's available. And this isn't about very technically orientated innovations, I would say. It's more about system conditions which encourage exchange and resilience rather than flow and structure. So it's economies of scope, not scale. It might be, for example, a temporary materials storage in a town or a city, which allow materials to be there for a while and be accessible to lots of businesses and enterprise. It might be around community kitchens or maker labs or platform cooperatives, things that are in the infrastructure which are innovative, but they allow the exchange of materials to get better utilization and reduce waste. By doing more, you might be able to reduce the overall waste, or ideally change waste into food. And one of the interesting things about this is that if you do take insights from living systems, this isn't an option, this is a necessity of how these systems work. And if we want to take insights from it, the question is, what do we learn? And the learn is around economies of scope. Now, last point on this one, circular economy is also picked up because it hints at something more. It's not just practical, it's not just teasing us with the idea that we could become not just eco-efficient, but eco-effective. It also, coming back to systems, talks about the economy a little bit. Is it a shifting economic framework, as Nylan from Finland suggests, or is it really just a toolbox with a nod to systems? On the left, this is Kate Rayworth. She characterizes the existing economy on the left-hand side here. And elements of the circular economy that fit the existing model are around, yes, it's more embedded. We've got to be conscious of social environmental context. It's much more dynamic. And we want it to be regenerative by design. In other words, rebuild natural and social capital, and to do many of those business models that alluded to previously. But for many people, that's not enough, or that's not where the logic leads. For them, it's to say, well, let's take insights from these living systems, let's take insights from contemporary science. On the right-hand side, you have what Kate Rayworth characterizes as 21st century economics, where the additional characteristics are around something being regenerative and distributive by design, around a safe living space for humanity, and where growth is not the be-all and end-all, it is something around which she says she's agnostic. And there's this tension between closed loop and closed source dominates on the left-hand side. Much of what is done under the label circular economy is dominated by let's close the loop, let's control the flows, whereas on the right-hand side there's much more around exchange and resilience and creating networks for the exchange and cascading of materials. And so this is interesting in a way, because the wash-up might be that we're on a journey from the left hand characterization towards the right, and both of the areas in which we work in are very pertinent to that. So my end-up challenge is really, can we do all this if we don't take a different worldview? And should it be embedded in complexity science, particularly taking insights from living systems? And if it does, how does this contextualize what we're doing? And you might then add in, well, we need a complexity economics approach, things like Eric Beinhocker recommends. Nick Hanauer is his co-author in a new book coming up. And indeed, on my shelf, I've got a business book published through Harvard Press, which talks about the balance between efficiency and resilience as a guideline for new business approaches. Well, I'm going to stop sharing now and come back into the mix.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Let's see if we have any questions for you in the chat.
We probably only have. Oh, it's a question from you. Put them in the chat.
No, there are no questions.
Yeah, well, that's a very bad sign, but...
oh, it's a good sign.
So, thank you, Ken. Maybe I can start then to break ice with some stupid questions. No, I don't think they are stupid. As you know, this project deals a lot with more like innovative firms, and how actors like us, the universities, the regions, and so on can support them in becoming more eco-innovative and in perhaps also contribute a bit more to a circular economy. Even if it has not like outspoken in the project as such, this has become, as we are all aware of, a very big agenda for innovation in Europe. But working in this area for quite a long time, even before it was called circular economy, you can sometimes become a bit frustrated that things go so slow. We have a lot of good ideas, we have got a lot of good models and so on, but we are still looking for these real game changers that can actually make this shift, because the circular economy is about a new economy, not so much about doing things a bit differently. So coming to my question, where do you think we will find these game changers? Will there be existing companies with existing business models that are transforming them into circular? Or will we find totally new business models created by perhaps new actors, new firms, new organizations to make these games really change?
Well, this is it's an excellent question, of course, and what comes first? In our views, in contemporary European views, we are evolving the economy, if you like, using a social, technical, innovation approach. We're not, I think, looking profoundly at too much change, and so what might well happen is that the technologies, such as been a lot of fuss around sharing economy, so-called new business models, like, well, it's not entirely new, but increasing the amount of interest in product service systems. The notion of total product liability is coming up a lot, where from the mine right through to the recovery, these materials are tracked and the products and components are tracked. This is a natural complement to having business models which are around products as services. So you might see curated materials and products and services. Now, these depend on both the system level. What does Europe think about encouraging that? You know, the system structures, and also the innovators working in it. I'm not a big fan of thinking that businesses by themselves will change the overall approach in Europe. I think we've learnt, at least from the COVID crisis, that states or large regional blocks have a very central role in what happens because they set the rules of the game. And increasingly, even in the, you know, there's been a sort of myth around that business can do it if only it's incentivized. Well, I don't think that quite holds up, because it requires the state or the regional bloc to intervene to save many of these businesses in this case, a pandemic crisis or an upcoming financial crisis. So I think it's very much rules of the game. And where do rules of the game change? These apparently change most often when we have a different narrative, a different set of assumptions around things. At the moment, we've got this assumption about, well, the economy works pretty well, let's just clean it up and let's get more efficient. Whereas if we have a different framework for thinking, we might say, okay, what does it take to make sure that waste is food? Do we curate the whole materials cycle? Is it in our interest? And I'm afraid that's a longer process of changing the perspective. Even in my own area, circular economy, you see far more interest in just, here's the system, let's clean it up, let's do some more recycling. But I can illustrate that challenge around plastics, if you like. Most of the effort to do something with plastics, particularly single use, just assumes you're going to have more plastics like that. Now, it's been said many times that perhaps plastics in that use or in that type of material is the wrong material. That's why it has to be by design and intention. What do you intend? Not how do you just tidy it up? And that's a very big leap. And I think we haven't seen enough crises, unfortunately, to shift the dial quick enough on that. So I'm more for the narrative changes, and then people find that there's a self-interest in that narrative, and then it moves through the system. It's a long answer to a very interesting question, Olof.
I see now there are some questions in the chat. Jonas asks about the donut goals, if you could elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, this is the work of Kate Rayworth. The donut goals, or her use of the donut as a sort of metaphor for the shape of the economy. And it obviously leads to her being called the donut lady, because she's used that particular metaphor. But essentially, it's to look at the planetary boundaries on the outside and make sure we don't go beyond or try and push those too hard, and to make sure within the central space of the donut, the hole in the donut, that there are people who can, there is no people in there where they're really having trouble sustaining themselves. So the donut is the idea that we have a safe operating space for human activity, which is both good for social and environmental sustainability in there. But it rather depends upon a thriving economy, she calls it, rather than one that's necessarily chasing growth. And that's where it becomes more difficult. She's doing big things with the city of Amsterdam at the moment. Amsterdam is determined to become a city that reflects the donut economics, if you like, which is around, if you like, it's circular economy plus many elements. And the big difference, I think the big challenge is she wants it to be not just regenerative by design, but distributed by design. And she's hinting at those things around the resilience, the number of nodes and networks. So there are thoughts coming through which take a more living systems perspective on this. But donut stuff is all around the internet. You have no trouble getting access to that. How much sustainability is predicted to concern the human processes? Is there an example of actions and platforms that connect? I don't quite get the question. If it could be rephrased a bit, I can probably have a go at that.
Please try to reframe your question there. And you have something from Steph about innovation and risk?
Yeah. less risk averse. It's an odd thing with financing, generally. Say private investment, they want to take risks as long as the public authorities have covered their arses on it, if you like, that it isn't really something that risky. And part of that problem is that there are places, private capital, to start with, we'll talk about that, can put their money where there's relatively no risk. It's usually into existing assets. So I think there's a great opportunity for the public bodies, particularly after this crisis, to say, we can borrow money if we need to borrow. We can get money at essentially negative rates. We can issue bonds which don't cost us anything. I think Austria issued a negative bond for 100 years and it was oversold. In other words, there's no trouble picking up funds that could be deployed without it being in any way a burden in this particular environment. So I think kick-starting it is to try and get away from the idea that we can't get the money and we have to be really careful with it. And so they can take more risks, inverted commas, because they're not really going to lose much. What are they going to lose? And I think with the rise of ideas like modern monetary theory, there's been an illusion around the fact that we have to start with that we have to tax in order to spend. If you control the currency, I know within Europe, only some countries control their own currency. Most are tied into the euro. But if you went to the euro level, there is no real problem about spending that money into existence as long as you make sure you're watching out for inflation. It's what the real economy, how that reacts to it. So this is again another question of storytelling, because half the time you see people go, oh, well, I don't know if we can risk that because we've got to make sure the budget is just fine. I think that's part of an agenda for inaction. Why not try a load of things and see what happens, see what works out well? But that's counter to the dominant model within Europe. I believe the EU divides the CE into three pillars. Which one left to set common frames for? Can you clarify what are these challenges and how we contributed? No, I can't help with that one.
Rika, it's okay if you unmute your if you want to speak to Ken, it's okay, because we have time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a very interesting session. And Ken Webster, it sounds like you really know what you are talking about. So I have a question. And the European Union presents the circular economy to exist in three pillars. So it's the manufactured economy or capital, and there is the natural capital, also the social capital, and I believe the social capital isn't really ready to calculate on or make predictions for. Yes, how well examined is this new subject, and how can I learn more and contribute to that? Because I think that is a key for everybody entering the transition.
That's a very good point. If you look at it dispassionately or try to, the third pillar around social is underdeveloped. Yeah. Now, one of the reasons for that is that the original, and I was involved in part of it, the original aim was to engage business and policymakers in something that was an economic advantage, which would spin off social and environmental benefits. But very largely, it did ignore the social element of it, because it was assuming if it led to more jobs and growth, the jobs and growth thing, the social element will be picked up because of the economy is doing better. It's not designed with the social thing in mind as an explicit objective from the start. And in fact, many of the initiatives around circular economy work well with environment, and they might work well with business doing well, but it might not, because there's a very mixed picture around whether it provides additional employment or in fact continues the trend to reducing employment. So the third pillar is underdeveloped, and of course the EU is strong on that being more developed, but it isn't too much at the moment.
Is there any projects that you would like to recommend, or?
A project which I'd like to recommend, what, from the third pillar point of view?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Actually, it's more at this, the resilience end of thing, small scale businesses which add value with what they've got. Let me give you an example with that. There's a brewery which makes beer out of waste bread, but it has a connection to other businesses. In other words, its byproducts add to the potential for other businesses in the area. So it's like a cascading of materials. It's circulating cash in a particular region. It's providing more employment and opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises to join in. But one concrete example, if you want to look at it, that was the Toast Ale, is a UK one. It's called Biohm, B-I-O-H-M, which is both designing innovative building products, but is run as a social enterprise, or with social concerns right to the fore, including in its governance and so on. That's an example of taking insights from living systems, developing new products around the biomaterials, but also running it in a way that has very strong social uplift. And they managed to do all three things in the one business. But it's by intention and design. You know, they set out that way. They didn't sort of find themselves there and then how do we change? Yeah. So Biohm, B-I-O-H-M is a great one. If you want to look at that mix of the three things, that's in the UK in Somerset.
Thank you very much. And also, you wrote, can you imagine how to contribute, or how the future, you had some question there.
Well, as an individual, yeah, like yourself, or you mean?
Yeah. You have to have a kind of vision for what will come after the circular economy.
Well, that would be great, because I think that circular economy is probably going to be just my topic for now, and people will say in 10 years' time, yeah, he was okay with that, but we've moved on to this now. So that's how ideas go, so there's no worry about that. But the core thing that might survive is this we now know how real world systems work. These are complex adaptive systems. So we have to have an economics that fits that perspective. That's not going to change. That's a longer term shift in contemporary scientific understanding. So increasingly things will be seen as how do they fit within these complex adaptive systems, and how do we maintain them and encourage them to thrive. So if you like, the core to all of this is really understanding systems better. And that will be, I think, the most durable perspective, because once you've got that in mind, you can analyze problems really quite easily, because you have a framework for thinking. And that's the hardest thing to shift, but it might offer the most productive engagement. That would be my tip. I think that would be durable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't see more questions in the chat, so I leave the floor to Wisdom Kanda.
Yes, thank you, Ken, for the very elaborate presentation. And I have just one question for you, because this project that we have, which is coming to an end, was dealing with regions and small and medium enterprises. So you present the circular economy as a kind of an economy-wide concept. So I want you to reflect a bit on how we can bring this concept down to the regions and down to businesses, and how they can make things happen.
Yes. I refer you to my earlier answer in a way, because if one gets a hold of the idea that for very large businesses, they might well be chasing the efficiency side of things, but in real world complex adaptive systems, We know that an enormous amount is around resilience and exchange, which means, Gunter Pauli said it, add value with what we've got, circulate cash locally, make sure waste is food, and you will get a thriving economy building. He calls it double-digit growth from the base. It's worth reading Gunter Pauli, Blue Economy 3, for lots of ideas. But I'm very happy to say, or not happy, but most people ignore it because there's nothing in it for a big business. There's nothing in it for big systems because these are really all marginal firms. They compete very heavily with each other. So where's the surplus that you might capture by going to scale? This isn't economies of scale, it's economies of scope. So building business enterprise networks where people tried it with eco-industrial parks where they put everybody together and tried to exchange materials. That didn't work terribly well in many instances. It's too forced. But this idea of adding value with what we've got and cascading materials around locally and regionally looks like a good basis for growth. And the key element is, how do you get to connect with each other? This is why I think our platform cooperatives are interesting. How do you move things around? There have been examples of that near Antwerp, where a dedicated vehicle or two just did a route that was limited to 5 or 10 kilometers, that's all. But people could buy into that service continually. So it's facilitating the exchange. It's things like having things like, you see, infrastructure matters an awful lot. Temporary material stores I've mentioned, community kitchens I've mentioned, places where surplus can be stored and accessible. I know a furniture firm in the north of England who gets people from Belgium to come and take away the broken or not saleable stuff and then burn it in Belgium. Now, if they had enough free or accessible warehouse space, they could put these slightly damaged objects there, and other businesses might come and say, well, we can do something with that. You know, so I think it's a question of making sure there's an infrastructure that enables exchange at the local, regional level, so that you can become more aware of what other people have got and start doing deals. But also comes in with this thing of, what have you got? This idea of, do we know that it's not a contaminated, useless load of nonsense that you're trying to buy into? Is it clean? And then is it food for your system? You know, Gunter Pauli often mentions this thing about building businesses out of coffee grounds. You know, coffee shops have these coffee grounds. Well, they're a substrate for mushrooms. There are lots of examples of that being put into practice. So it's taking waste as food and building enterprise networks on top of that. Many, many small firms, I think, would be benefiting from that. But it's nothing grand to shout about. It's not like, oh, here's a new product we've invented. It's here's a new infrastructure we've implemented.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm just moving on. All right. How do you see circular economy used in agriculture, food production? Well, yes, that's regenerative agriculture because you're trying to rebuild natural capital. And oddly, it's just the same thing. I was listening to a farmer in Canada who said, as soon as I stopped thinking about output per hectare and started thinking of profit per hectare, things came into a different light. Because regenerative agriculture emphasizes rebuilding the soils to get quality outputs, but not necessarily one thing. It might be multiple cash flows that come from this. An example might be, say, in orchards, you can get breeds of sheep that don't stand on their hind legs and eat, forage in the trees. They just forage on the ground. You can keep sheep with orchards. It's a traditional practice. And you can also keep other, you can keep bees, you can keep sheep. You can, you're not just trying to get output of apple, a type of apple. You're trying to optimize the 3D opportunities of the apple orchard to get multiple cash flows and then multiple benefits, which can then be more profitable, even if the output of any one particular thing is lower. So agriculture, Novamont in Italy are a great example of an industry that takes advantage of local production to produce matabai, which is a sort of biodegradable plastic, but they use, I think, types of thistle as an input, stuff that grows locally. So you've got this idea that if waste is food and you can connect people together, you can generate additional revenue, as long as you're not focused on, oh, I've got to sell apples to Britain or something like that. Not necessarily that, because in that case you get commodified, you get commodification. It's all about output, lowering the costs of production, and it's a different game to trying to add value with what you've got. So, and that also means that there are good examples in Britain of, say, river food organics, which have got rid of the middle person. They do these distributions direct from the farm to the customers. You know, these box schemes, it's pretty advanced with river food organics. It requires a different view about how you relate to the customer to get the advantages out of that one. And there are lots of interesting things like that. The Tamar project in Cornwall is an interesting example of adding value with what you've got around agriculture. So I think the era of so much concentration on just output rather than revenue is an interesting one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ken, for your presentation and for the interesting discussion. We will now take a 10-minute break to 10:30 when we will start again.
Yeah, can I just say that if anybody wants to get in touch, I'm sure you can supply my email and or LinkedIn. I'm there. Okay, I can answer more questions or perhaps come back on your comments.
Thank you very much.
That way. All right, bye for now.
Bye for now, and we'll see each other again at 10:30.
So, as Sigrid said, we have been the advisory partner in this project, and being an advisory partner is really great because you tell people to do something and then they do it, and then you report what they have been doing. So that has been a really, really good thing of being an advisory. I will split, and we will split this presentation, Wisdom and I, so I will leave over after about 10 minutes. So you will hear about what we have learned, what we have seen related to this project. We'll talk mainly about two things. First, I will start talking about perceived effectiveness among SMEs on the support for eco-innovation that they can get. And then I will leave over to Wisdom, who will talk about internal capacities of regions, what they can do and how they can do things better. And by then, you understand that now we are going in more deeply into what we have been doing in the project. I guess many of you really are quite familiar with working with SMEs and thinking on why you should work with SMEs and so on. But normally these three reasons are mentioned. First is that SMEs quite often dominate in the industrial sectors in their countries that they are operating. And SMEs means, of course, small and medium-sized enterprises. They are also in some way key actors in job creation, meaning that growth in small companies often means that they employ more people. And since job creation is a big issue around Europe, of course, we want to focus on SMEs. And thirdly, and not as least important, is that they can be very innovative and have really interesting things coming up that could be worth spreading on a larger scale. But SMEs, they have challenges in general, very much related to their size. It's a lack of resource. It's also a lack of economies of scale and scope. You heard that Ken was very much focusing on economies of scope, and not only economies of scale. There might be higher transaction costs related to relative to larger enterprises, and also we have to remember that small firms always have to compete with larger firms when it comes to R&D expenditure and innovation. There are also a number of barriers or challenges for SMEs when it comes to eco-innovation. Maybe the first three mentioned here are general, but anyway, they are even more pronounced for SMEs. The first is something that we call the double externality problem. And it means two problems that when an innovator has to face. The first externality problem is that if you innovate, if you develop new things, and then put it up to a market and display it, you always faces the risk of being copied. Your competitors can be much faster and learning from your hard work and copy you and coming perhaps running ahead of you, so that you have invested a lot, but it's not really you who get all the benefits. The second externality problem is related to sustainability, that these innovations, eco-innovations, they normally have a lot of benefits for other stakeholders than the company and its customers. And these kind of benefits are often not possible to get paid for. For example, you reduce climate change, emission of climate gases, but the benefit of climate change is not only for you, it's for society as a whole. This means that eco-innovations, they are very, very dependent on regulations. There is a lot of different demands from a broad set of actors, networks and institutions, and often then SMEs lack the specific knowledge to eco-innovate, leading to perhaps a reactive, informal, and ad hoc approach to eco-innovation. We have been working a lot with what we call support systems. Support systems, you see the definition up there. A system that comprises of all actors, institutional settings, and resources that help entrepreneurs in successfully generating and implementing innovation. We look upon the support systems as two sides. We have a supply side. Wisdom will talk more about that, with people who want to help. And they have the demand side, the companies, the entrepreneurs who want help. And there might be a gap between the supply and demand, and what we have tried now is to find out what are the gaps and how can we fill those gaps. And as I said, we will focus now a few minutes more on the demand side, that is the SMEs. An SME wanting to approach a support system finds things like this. This is a map. This is a map of the support system of Östergötland here in Sweden, our home region. We can see there's a lot of organizations. Each box is an organization who want to help SMEs in some way. You can see that they are, in this case, very much focused on the regional level, perhaps some on national, regional, and a few on national and local level. We can also see that there's a lot of actors wanting to work with demonstration, verification, commercialization, and marketing, and not so many in R&D and diffusion. We have done these maps for all the regions, and here's another example, the Vidzeme planning region in Latvia. Here we can see a new thing, and that is that the European level becomes more pronounced, and also the national level. And by that, we only want to demonstrate that systems look differently, they act differently, but we have to understand the systems and what kind of support they give before we can assess them and seeing if they are performing in a way that can help SMEs. So this is what we asked our SMEs for. We made, as Sigrid said in the introduction, an interview study with 140 SMEs across all regions, mainly smaller companies, startups, established companies, and quite a few offering eco-innovative products. We asked them about what kind of support they want, who they ask for support, and what they think of the support they get. The results from this survey shows that SMEs, they go for different kinds of support actors. They go to knowledge institutes, research institutes, and universities like us, and you see there's actually some people who don't think that we are difficult to collaborate with. We have to improve there. They turn to governments mainly to get money. But also what is very interesting is that they often go to private organizations, meaning other companies, of course, hiring commercial consultants, and also look for private investors because we want to have, in some way, avoid governmental public funding. There is also a number of other intermediaries that are used from the SME side. The perceived usefulness of the support they get. we are in a way quite happy that most of them have a very positive view of the support system. They think that they have really been supported and that they are satisfied. But anyway, of course, we can give some kind of improvement areas. We can have divided them into two areas. One is the general support, and then is the more eco-innovative support. And first of all, I think the first bullet there, that they want guidance in the complex system, is quite easy to understand, having in mind the maps I just showed, that it is very complicated, a lot of actors who want to help. The small companies also complain about bureaucracy, especially when we ask for funding, and something that we have been working actively in some of the regions. I think we can see some examples of that later on. And they are also sometimes a bit surprised that there are things started, it's suddenly up and running for a few years, and then it disappears. So there is an instability in the support system. And finally, they have also some improvement areas that they have found out in the eco-innovative specific support. And there is the general lack of support in this specific area. Something that they really would like to have or see more of is networks where they can find like-minded entrepreneurs and exchange experiences. And also having a long-term support, not only focusing like innovation in the early phases, but also marketing, market formation, and issues like that. So, what about the supply systems, supply actors? Wisdom, please.
Thank you, Olof, for that nice talk about the demand side. So now we move on to the supply side. So the supply side of the support system contains actors who try to do things to actually support companies developing eco-innovations. And so these can include universities, incubators, science parks, and banks, for example. So what we did was to develop an approach or a tool to assess this system from a bit more systemic perspective. So this self-assessment tool has 5 main steps that we developed. The first step was to define the focus of the assessment. So this means specifically to specify the goal and the scope of your assessment. And then the second step has to do with the structure. So you identify which actors are in the system, what are their positions, and what kind of interactions happen within the system. And then you move on to map the functions of the support system in the third step, where you identify and describe their activities to support SMEs or companies developing eco-innovation. The fourth step, which is the heart of this self-assessment tool, has to do with an assessment of the support system. So in this step, experts kind of discuss in a collaborative way multiple key areas and questions that they use to assess the support system. And this is based on their knowledge of the system and also data and reports and documents which have been developed on the support system. And then finally, you formulate recommendations which can be used to improve the system and develop action plans. So I would go deeper into the assessment of the support system so that you understand what we did specifically as part of this project. So the key assessment areas, the assessment is based on key areas and a set of corresponding questions. So we have 6 key areas which we have developed, and we argue that these 6 key areas are quite important to have an effective business support system. We need these 6 key areas. I think we had a little challenge with the slide. Someone is showing their slide, so we go back. Is it this one? This one.
Det är någonting som är konstigt här.
Det är EU-länderna som delar någonting. Deras har hoppat igång.
Yes, so this kind of things happen from time to time, but everything is under control. And so to do the assessment, we developed 6 key areas that we took from our previous project, EU project, which we argued that these 6 key areas need to be in place for a support system to function effectively. And so the first one has to do with the structure, and this has to do with all actors, networks, and institutions that make up the support system. The second one has to do with the functions, that is the activities that they do to support companies in the support system. And dynamic tailoring is how much these activities can be customized to meet the changing needs of companies. And also navigation has to do with how easy it is to come into the support system and actually be helped to find the right kind of support which fits your specific needs. Mainstreaming sustainability talks about the extent to which sustainability is integrated and accepted in the support system, and there has to be also assessment of the system and follow up to develop action plans. So what we did was then to develop an Excel file which contained some areas. So this slide here shows you the basic structure of the Excel document, and it has these 6 key areas, and we have question numbers connected to these 6 key areas. And each key area has a set of specific questions that experts respond to. So for example, when we talk about the structure, then we had about 3 to 4 questions that try to capture the essence of the structure. So questions were about how stable are the actors in the system, how financially independent are these actors, and how they collaborate and interact with each other, and so on and so forth for the other key areas that we assessed. And then to make it quite qualitative and collaborative in sense, we developed responses we developed first responses, third responses, and fifth responses. So the experts could choose in between 1 to 5, depending on how well their system is functioning. 5 being a very excellent functioning system, and then 1 being quite low in relation to that question. So there were different approaches used in the regions. Some had a workshop where they brought together key actors, they discussed and tried to respond to all these questions based on a consensus and understanding of the system. Some regions also sent out the Excel file as a survey to different actors in the region. They individually responded, and then they made an aggregate of these responses. That being said, there are different ways to do this, but it's also important to leave in comments. So we have a final column which actors can leave comments and specify reasons why they give a certain response as being 1 or 5 or high or low in that sense. So I'll show you some results from the assessment. So this figure pretty much shows how the different regions performed in terms of the assessment. But I like to highlight that the regions are quite different, and they have their own goals and ambition and characteristics and setups. So the idea was not to compare and find out which is the best, but is to identify learning opportunities from each other and see what we can learn from each other as part of the project. So some few insights that I can pick up is that the issue of dynamic tailoring, when you look at the graph, that is the gray line, and that has to do with how much there is eco-innovation specific support in the regions. And this was generally ranked low in all the regions that we studied, in all the 10 regions. So which means that all the regions to a large extent agreed that the kind of eco-innovation specific support was a bit lacking in their regions. And you can see that the regions also look quite different from the assessment, and sustainability is quite accepted or mainstreamed in many of the regions that were assessed. Nice. So after doing this study as part of the project, we in the region of Östergötland and in the university as well had the opportunity to even develop further based on the learnings from the project. So we did not just stop at the project outcomes. We went on further to study our region even closer and try to understand what kind of interactions are going on within our region. Who are the key actors? Who are they collaborating with? What kind of things are they doing when it comes to eco-innovation? So we did an extensive social network analysis, and semi-structured interviews with actors within our support system. And the interviews focus on their activities to support companies and what kind of interactions they have with other actors based on eco-innovation projects. So this figure here shows you the results from our system, because the previous pictures that Olof has been showing very much show how the actors are in the system, which phase they work with, and which level, whether they are on the national, regional, or local levels. But this one tries to take it a bit further and show the interactions, who are the key actors, and so on and so forth. So I would like you to keep in mind three things. The first one is the thickness of the links. So you could see that some of the links are quite thick and some are not so thick. So the thickness simply indicates the frequency of interaction between the two actors. So you see the Regional County Council and Linköping University have a very thick link in between them. So it means that these two actors are interacting quite a lot through projects, through funding, through different collaborations to support eco-innovation within the region. The second thing you can keep in mind is that they are the color of the nodes. So the darker the nodes, the darker green nodes, have higher linkages to other actors. So it simply means that these actors are quite central in the system, and they can link you to many other actors in the system. So you could see that for the university as well, and you can see that for an actor called LEAD. And LEAD is an incubator in the system which tries to bring together different companies and different actors in relation to eco-innovation. Similarly, you see that for the municipality of Linköping and the municipality of Norrköping, which are the two biggest municipalities in the support system. And the size of the nodes also indicates something. It indicates the higher potential to convey the shortest paths in the system. So actors which have a larger size in this figure can actually help you to reach other actors quite quickly. They have shorter paths and connections to other actors in the region. And those actors which are quite outside or peripheral have not so big influence on the system when it comes to eco-innovation activities. And this work is reported in a conference paper that you see referenced below, and it would be coming out soon. So some overall insights as I draw to the end of my presentation is that the systems can look quite different in structure. You see in some regions there's very much influence from the EU and the national level, and you see in some regions it's very much on the local, regional level, and some influence or interaction from the higher levels. But that said, the systems are open systems. They are not operating in isolation, so we should always have in mind that even if we look at the regions, they are embedded in the national context, in the European context, and even in the global context. So the structure can be different, but then they can deliver the same essential functions. So the message there is that we should focus on the functions that they deliver. Those are the most important things, what they do to help the SMEs to reach their goals. And these functions can be delivered with different setups. And then eco-innovation specific support was generally lacking in all the regions. So a next step is to discuss what kind of specific support is needed and how can that specific support be brought into the regions and into the regional support system and the different actors that are in it. And also there is a need for interaction between different kind of actors. So that you realize that there are some actors within the support system who are very much established, long existing, and quite stable financing and personal resources, whilst there are other actors who are project-based. They come up and disappear quite quickly, and they are very much focused on particular niches. For example, they could be focused on the clean tech sector or the agricultural sector. So there should be a kind of interaction between the more established and more niche actors to be able to transfer knowledge, to learn from each other, and to benefit from the agility of this kind of new actors and short-term actors, so that the knowledge and the competence that they develop does not disappear from the system when they disappear as an organization or project. And finally, the self-assessment tool is not the end. It should be seen as a start. It's a tool that provides a collaborative approach to continuously learn about your region, to learn about your support system, to identify improvement opportunities, and also to develop action plans for improvement. So these are some main insights from what we have done. And we would like to thank you very much and welcome questions in the chat, or you could open up your mic and ask your question directly as Olof joins me up here.
So, can stop sharing. And I know that we have one question in the chat. It's from Jonas, who asks about non-users of support systems. Can you say something about those? That's an interesting question. A bit naughty question, isn't it? I think that if looking into our home region, since it's easier because you know your home region the best, I know that we have discussions like, well, we have quite a lot of successful people, successful companies out there, and they have never ever used any one of us. So and that maybe you become a bit disappointed, but maybe you should be proud of that, because when you're not needed, so things are going anyway in the direction that you want. But I believe that there is a lot of non-users who are, I think one thing is that which we experience is that they don't really know, they're not aware of the support that they can get. Then it comes to funding, then it comes to, for example, skilled students who can work for free actually in courses, modules and things like that. And they are not aware of that. Something that we are also trying to improve in our home region here. I know that there were a few regions that actually involved these non-users in their interviews in the super project. I cannot remember that I actually looked into what they answered and how they differed from other guys, but I believe that is one of the reasons also that we find when you start talking about support systems, you think a lot about the public support, but there is a huge private support system out there, and that is not reflected in the studies that we are doing in this race in relation to that. But as you saw in the results, we have a lot of private supporters who are there doing things but are not perhaps seen as a support system. I think even a lot of people mention that, well, I see my customer as my most important support, because it's the discussions with the customer that I develop my customer's offering. So that's more like a reflection, and maybe Jonas, you have your own reflection.
Yes, I do. We did a survey on non-users in Denmark, I think 3 or 4 years ago. It showed that many of the non-users had a tendency to be less innovative, but also more traditionally based in terms of business sectors. For instance, carpenters and so on don't have much use for the business system, since they are not poised to do some kind of product innovation. They are a service delivery company, so they don't need funding for developing new products and so on. What surprised us was that most of those non-users saw their most important support as their lawyers and their accountants. So they as well as family. They took very much support from family as well, other business owners, but also wives and other relatives. And I don't know whether it's a general thing for Europe, but that was the case for Denmark.
Thanks.
Yes, so there's a question about how the international dimension can help to kind of narrow the gap between supply and demand. And that's a very interesting question. And it connects to very much to what I said, that even though we are studying the region, we should not be oblivious of the fact that they exist within a broader national and international scope. So depending on the type of eco-innovation that you are developing, you might find very important support actually on the global level. So when you look at eco-innovation such as solar panels, then if you are a company in Germany, you might not be the only one having all the knowledge and competence, but you might all of a sudden realize that there's a lot of production going on in China, China has become a very strong and important actor in that sector, and they might influence the prices and the cost and the kind of challenges and barriers that you face. So it's very much important to be on the local level and be very close to the companies and work closely with them, but also open up for global and national interactions and EU level interactions in order to be able to close the gaps that come up. For example, innovations such as biogas technologies are very much local based when it comes to the resource flows and material exchanges, but the technology itself can be a very global technology, and you have to pick in support from different places to be able to overcome the challenges and the gaps. That's why it's interesting to have this kind of EU projects or Interreg projects where we collaborate across countries, collaborate across regions, learn from each other, and develop our competencies in these areas.
We have a final question before we leave over to the next thing in the program, and that is about which support system, governmental or private, public or private, is more reliable for SMEs and why? That's also a bit difficult question in some way, a good question. I think my belief is that business are doing business best with business. So in that sense, I would prefer if there were private actors out there doing things that is necessary. My experience is that universities and public, other kind of public organizations might have become easier to be forerunners. We are more used to doing projects and developing these new things and setting more like the stage, and then hoping that there are skilled entrepreneurs, private support actors that actually take over and refine what we have been doing and then make it on a commercial basis. So I think it's always, as always, it's good that there is a learning between the public and private and public to become more successful. So I think we have to close there, and we will now leave over for Sigrid for the next 3 presentations from the regions that had participated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olof and Wisdom. Next up is some partner presentations. We have 3 regions that will do a short presentation about the results and actions they have implemented in their region. And we will start with our Polish partner, Dorota from Podlaska Regional Development Foundation. Are you ready, Dorota?
Yes, I am ready. I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Your sound is a bit low.
Low, okay. So I will try to do something with this. And what about now?
It's better.
It's better. Okay.
Yes.
So good morning, everyone. Good morning to my partners from my project, and good morning to everyone. Just like Sigrid said, I'm from Podlaska Regional Development Foundation in Białystok in Poland.
Sorry, Dorota.
Yes?
Your sound is still bad, and I think it's the wrong presentation showing. I think Ireland is somehow trying to.
Okay, no, yes. It's not my presentation. That's right. I will try to share my presentation. Okay. And
start with the presentation.
And what about the voice? Is it better?
No, it's still quite low.
Okay, I will try to maybe not to shout, but to speak a little more louder. Okay.
It will work. It's fine, Dorota. So go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. You can see it on the screen. Yes. Okay. Just like I said, I'm from Podlaska Regional Development Foundation, and as you can see on the screen, foundation is located in the Podlaski Voivodeship, and the Voivodeship is on the east of Poland, bordering with Belarus and Lithuania. And Białystok is the capital of the Podlaski Voivodeship. And now I would like to say a few words about the foundation. The foundation was established in September 1994. So as you can see, we are 26 years on the market, and it's really a huge time. And the foundation is a non-government organization that supports regional economic development. And I can say that we are one of the main actors in the region. And we also very actively participate in various international initiatives. And the Super Project is one of the examples of such initiative. And within Foundation, we also have Podlaski Equity Investment Fund, Podlaski Law Guarantee Fund, and Law Fund. And just like I said, we are one of the partner in the Super Project, and one of the goals in the Super Project was to identify the needs of SMEs in the region regarding, of course, to the eco-innovation. And another very important thing was what can we do to help SMEs to be more eco-innovative. So, as you can see on the screen, the needs of SMEs that we identified in our region were the first one. SMEs from our region said that the access to support had been hindered because of time and needed resources. Therefore, the support is gained mainly by companies which possesses required resources and experience. And another, companies operating in the eco sector had difficulties connected with finding adequate support. And regarding to this, to finding this adequate support, I must say that generally companies want to invest in eco-innovations, but they are simply not able to find support instruments adequate for their needs. So consequently, companies are not able to implement their ideas connected with eco-innovation. And nevertheless, if a company succeeds in the identification of an adequate kind of support, it turns out that the complexity of procedures and bureaucracy become a real obstacle to apply for a project or for a money. And companies with lack sufficient experience and resources are simply not able to prepare documentation and apply for funds. So, summarizing, companies generally said that procedures and forms are very complicated elements of the application process, and companies are often not able to deal with amount of formalities and complexion of the application form on their own, and they need to use external expertise to fulfill the application form. We, of course, identify the needs of SMEs with a strong help of our stakeholders, Podlaski Marshal Office and Białystok Science and Technology Park. You can see us in the picture on the screen. And our stakeholders participated in all meetings organized within Super Project. They were very active. They participated in our local meetings and in meetings organized by our partners in different countries. And they, of course, participate in this conference. And regarding to the stakeholders, they also promoted our actions, our recommendations from our action plan. And regarding to our action plan within Super Project that we prepared, we had two recommendations, and of course those two recommendations were based on the needs identified in the project. And here you can see the first recommendation. The first recommendation was that Podlaska Regional Development Foundation applied for being an operator of a grant project under submeasure 1 to 2, voucher for research services under the regional operational program of the Podlaski Voivodeship. And what is very important, the guidelines of the managing institutions didn't specify the elements that should be included in the application form for grants submitted by SMEs to the operator of a grant project. It is the operator who decides about the design and elements of the application form. So the operator independently creates the document from the very scratch. And this is it was our second recommendation in the action plan, and the recommendation was that the application form prepared by the grant project operator should contain only elements essential to obtain support without the complexity of the structure. And we did it. We implemented those two recommendations from our action plan. And you may think, what were the results? Were the companies interested in applying for these grants or not? You can see this on the next slide. In April 2019, we started to implement the grant project, and we prepared the application form for SMEs that contain only elements essential to obtain support. And what is very interesting, that the application form had only 5 pages, and 2 of them were regarding to the information such as name of the company, the address, the status of the company, employment, and so on. And SMEs could apply for the grants from June till September 2019. And what were the results? 164 grant applications had been submitted, and 87 contracts were signed. And you may ask why only 87, not 164. It was because of the value of the grant project. The value of the grant project you can see on the screen. And I must say it was a big our success, and companies stopped being afraid applying for grants, and all the time we heard from our companies, from our clients, that the application form is so simple that they didn't have any problems to fulfilling it. And another interesting thing, what kind of companies and from what sectors applied for grants. As you can see on the screen, the sectors were metal and machine industry, agro-food, medical, and from eco-innovations, 70 contracts were signed. But what is the most interesting, that 45 contracts were signed with micro companies. So thanks to the project, the micro and small companies stopped being afraid of applying for grants because the application form was so simple that they hadn't any problem to fulfill it. And here are some examples of the actions that SME applied for. For instance, these are just examples. Purchase of research services, design, manufacture and testing of a new product prototype, a solar photometer, purchase of a software license for development and designing of innovative agriculture machinery, purchase of research services, design, manufacture and testing of a prototype of a new product, an environmental data recorder with solar power, and for instance, conducting a research and development services to optimize the process of renting construction machinery. And what happened next? In 2020, it was another call for proposals for grantees, and it started and ended in June because so many companies were also interested in possessing grants. And we had 34 grant applications and 23 contracts were signed. And also some examples of SMEs that have applied. Development of a program module enabling doctors to work from home, purchase of research services consisting of designing, making prototypes and testing prototypes of a new lunch accessories with eco-packing, carrying out and delivering the results of research and development works leading to the CE mark on an industrial machine for processing knives used in forestry and the recycling industry. So What are the next steps? First of all, we would like to, of course, promote our grants and to continue the grant project in 2021. Of course, if it will be possible, we will see what will be the situation. But I think what is the most important, we would like to talk to the institutions responsible for the grants, that the application form for companies applied for the money shouldn't be too complicated, not only in this grant project, but in all projects that are doing in our voivodeship. So thank you very much for your attention. And at the end, I must say that it's really a pity that we can't see face to face, and we just simply can't meet and talk during the coffee break. I'm sure we will do this maybe in the next project doing together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorota. And I agree, of course. It will be nice to see you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Okay, I will stop to share my presentation.
Thank you. And I don't see any questions in the chat, so I think we will.
Okay, maybe if you have another questions, you can write it, and I will answer it later on the chat. It's not a problem.
That's great. Thank you, Dorota.
Thank you.
Next, we have our Irish partner, Tipperary County Council, that I see had already shared their screen. Perfect. So Fiona and Angela, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and hope this finds everybody well. So just on behalf of Tipperary County Council, I'm just going to go through and I suppose showcase our participation and the benefits of the Super Project. So the Super Project within Tipperary, obviously supporting SMEs to become more environmentally friendly, supporting green business development, growth and innovation, bringing support actors together and stakeholders to identify areas of complementarity and the gaps in the provision. Our policy instrument that we were hoping and will achieve is the local economic and community plan for County Tipperary. And the stakeholders that were very much partners on this project, which Tipperary County Council, the Local Enterprise Office, the Green Business Programme, Limerick Institute of Technology, South Tipperary Development Company, North Tipperary Development Company, the Green Business Network and Tipperary Energy Agency. So they were the primary partners and our stakeholders within the county. We had three specific action areas to increase the uptake of environmental process by the small and medium enterprises, to promote greater awareness and knowledge of SME support, and to support SME innovation. So within this, we have a small video to showcase to you this morning, and this demonstrates views from our stakeholders. So that involves Ita Horn, who is from the Local Enterprise Office, and Sinead Fitzgerald, who is the head of the Enterprise at Tipperary County Council, Noel Heffernan as one of our stakeholders, and Tipperary Green Business Network, and Chris Noonan from Tipperary Energy Agency. So we will hope that all the technology works perfectly here, and that we can go to play. Oh no.
Oh.
Okay.
Fiona, we can't hear the sound.
Okay.
So I think you have to do a new share and then share the browser where you show the video.
Okay, so if I stop video and then start video. No, that's not. That's not working.
Share the computer sound.
Okay, I'm trying that now. It's working in a Zoom room, so the joys of technology. Options. Okay,
We can help you from here, maybe.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be fantastic.
We will try. Just
Thank you. The joys of modern technology.
Yes. Okay, we will share it from here, so
Thank
let's
you
try.
very much.
Hello, my name is Isha Horan. I work for the Local Enterprise Office Tipperary, which is based in a rural part of Ireland. Our remit in the Local Enterprise Office is to foster, promote and develop economic and enterprise development throughout Tipperary. We achieve this through provision of an enterprise hub that provides information and advice to new startups and developing businesses. We also provide grants towards new employment, capital purchases and marketing activities. One area that we place significant focus is on the building of management capability skills and development of business owners and their employees. As part of the partners involved in the Super project, we're able to reach out to SMEs to support them to become more environmentally friendly by providing information workshops and networking events. One such event was held in February of this year called Green for Micro. The aim of this event was to inform businesses and organisations of methods that can be introduced to reduce costs in energy consumption areas such as heating, lighting, water and transport. With the assistance of the Super project, we were able to support the Tipperary Green Energy Network, which features a variety of businesses that enhance environmental management as well as providing best practices to SMEs. The Super project is an excellent example of collaboration between relevant agencies, colleges and businesses. Businesses who have participated in green cost reduction exercises have seen benefits such as reduced operational costs, more efficient use of resources, better monitoring and management, improved staff involvement and engagement, all of which has resulted in them developing a sustainable competitive advantage. The Local Enterprise Office welcomed the opportunity to be one of the partners in the Super project. We look forward to working again on projects into the future. Thank you.
Hello, Anthony Fitzgerald is my name, Head of Enterprise and Economic Development here in Tipperary County Council. I've been a member and involved in collaboration with the Super project over the last number of years there, in the capacity of the project coordinator with the Agrichem Way project here in Tipperary. Now, the Agrichem Way project is led by Glanbia, a local food company, which seeks to build the first of its kind biorefinery to convert whey permeate, a byproduct of cheese production, into lactic acid and polylactic acid, which is used for the production of biodegradable plastic, which in turn then can be used to package cheese products or dairy products. So you have a circular economy at play and operational in that project, and it's developing the technology and the expertise to produce that product commercially. We were delighted in 2018 to welcome the Super project to Lishin, the location of the Agrichem Way project, and the aims of the Super project and the partners there, the stakeholders, very much consistent with the aims and objectives of the Agrichem Way project, in that they're both about resource utilization and resource efficiency, and making better use of Earth's resources for everybody's benefit. The Agrichem Way project is a Horizon 2020 supported project with 11 partners across Europe, and 5 of which come from Ireland and drawn from both academia and research organisations. So delighted again that we were be able to be part of the Super project along its journey, and wishing you every success as you close out and move on from the project. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Noel Heffernan. I'm chairman of the Tipperary Green Business Network. We're a network of rural businesses that promote and support any activities which are leading to greener, more sustainable environment for society. Our network is made up of people from the farming community, renewable energy from wind, biomass, anaerobic digestion, and the sun. We've also got members from in the food production and manufacturing areas, recycling and upcycling, management and environmental consultancy. We organise events on resource efficiencies, biodiversity, and on the circular economy, and anything to do with improving the environment. So we were happy last year to engage with the Tipperary County Council to promote the super project and to make people in the rural community of Tipperary and beyond familiar with it. So the first event we held was in March, where the main topic was wastewater treatment and byproduct valorization. Also at that meeting, then we asked people to complete survey forms, to give us some feedback, and based on that we organised a second event where the focus was on presenting some case studies around how people had converted byproducts into something else that was saleable and had value. And then we finally had someone from the hospitality sector who showed how they had reduced their energy costs and the food waste in their business. So it was a great exercise, I think, and basically an opportunity to share what businesses were doing out in the rural communities. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Noonan. I'm an energy engineer with the Tipperary Energy Agency. I've been involved with Tipperary County Council and the Super project since 2018. Our experience with the project has been extremely rewarding. We've found it very valuable sharing experiences with our European colleagues, seeing how they're dealing with certain challenges, ones that we face here, that they face in their own countries, and learning what kind of solutions they're coming up with to those challenges. And we feel like we've been able to help them also in sharing our experiences. Most of our work in Tipperary Energy Agency focuses on accelerating the energy transition in Ireland. My day-to-day work involves writing reports and then hopefully driving on projects from those reports and seeing them to completion. And these projects are all energy-saving ones. We'd look to reduce running costs for our clients. Our clients would be a mixture of SMEs, the wider public, community groups, local authorities. These actions would drive on, then we'd hope they'd save energy, they'd reduce running costs for the clients, they'd safeguard them against increasing energy costs in the future, and also ultimately reducing CO2 emissions. We do a variety of projects, from solar PV, lighting upgrades, anything that saves energy. We found our experience with the Super project to be hugely beneficial. We've learned how other countries are implementing different projects, how they're getting projects off the ground, how they're identifying different projects. So it's been hugely beneficial.
Thanks, Sigrid.
Okay, now you can start sharing again if you want to show more of a presentation.
So I suppose my last slide there, really owning, I suppose, just reaffirms the showcase, I suppose, from the stakeholders about the benefits of the knowledge exchange and to be part of the Super project. And I suppose where we go from here is all of the various stakeholders will continue to provide a continued focus and support to small and medium enterprises to become more environmentally friendly. And I suppose taking the learning and supporting green business development and growth and innovation. So that's really the, so that's certainly from all our stakeholders that I thought it was more important that they tell their story of their participation and the benefits of the project. So thank you.
Thank you. You have a question in the chat. Can you see that?
So the question from Rose O'Connor is in relation to the successful way of engaging and motivating SMEs to adopt greener practices. And I suppose that is particularly true, I suppose, listening to the Green Business Network and to the local enterprise office and to the businesses as they're engaged with. And I suppose to try and find solutions and supports to enable, I suppose, that conversation and also to provide information to the SMEs within the county.
Okay, thank you very much. Then it's time for our third partner to present, and that's Jonas from Denmark. Are you ready, Jonas? Yes?
There we go.
Yes.
And then to present. Yes, I've brought you some examples from Denmark. Mostly it's a brief look into the two projects from our action plan. The first one is a further development of our good practice, which was called BioPro. The next project was BioScale. In order to understand BioScale, I'll just give you a brief introduction to BioPro. BioPro was a collaboration between universities, large-scale companies, in this presentation called corporates, and the focus was to spin out new companies by trying to solve the large companies' different issues with bioproduction. So the collaboration spun out new companies to try and solve these companies with the help from scientists from the universities. And BioScale is the further development of that project. Up until now, the purpose in the project is to create more spinouts from the BioPro collaboration. The first round was 15 spinouts, and at the moment they're trying to spin out more companies. They're also trying to develop the existing spinouts and add new corporate companies to the collaboration. Right now, they have had 3 sales workshops for the existing spinouts, and they have had 1 trade fair participation, which was called Lab Days. So right now, they are in the very start of the project, and actually, it's quite interesting to see that this project was funded directly from the new board in Denmark to support business innovation and the business support system. So much to my regret, there are no structural funds funding in this project, but that also had to do something with the redesign of the Danish support system. The other project is a bit more further in the results. This is a project which is, you would always think it was tailored to fit the super project, because this is a project made for training companies to pitch to large companies and match these companies with corporates across the Danish-Swedish border, and also secure funding for scaling this operation. So up until now, they have had 2 rounds with companies pitching to large companies, small companies pitching to large companies. First round was food tech. We have corporates from Alfa Laval, Arla, and Tetra Pak. We have 17 participants, and 5 of them made it to a direct dialogue with the corporates. So up until now, they have 5 companies who are starting to succeed with their eco-innovation and scaling that sales project. Also, they've secured funding for scaling their SMEs for 1.2 million euro. In the second round, which is almost ready to start the pitching rounds right now, we have 30 applicants, 25 of those were accepted, and they are trying to approach a large construction company and also property owning groups. And this last company, a Swedish company called Fojab, is an architecture company. So they're trying to train companies to pitch and try to start exporting their eco-innovation. For Denmark, this project was quite interesting in terms of timing, not this Clean Tech Impact Accelerator, but the super project. Because almost when we started the project, we started redesigning the business support system in Denmark, trying to reduce the number of actors and trying to have a more focused and more digital support experience for all the companies. And that it also impacted the lessons I learned from this project, which was in 3 points. There's a hard part in how to include the stakeholders in how to go from this self-assessment to the action plan, because the self-assessment in Denmark showed a system which was well functioning in terms of the stakeholders and the experts' opinion, but had a lot of opportunities. So that was our main problem, more or less, or focus to answer how to go from the self-assessment to an action plan, which gives meaning, and while thinking that we are in the midst of a redesign. Then the next part was how to come from the action plan to actual projects, and that also was quite interesting to observe that the structural funds project period is almost ending. We have a redesign at the same time, and we have to make a project or try to apply for a project at least that fits the action plan. So that was interesting. Successfully, we managed to identify 2 actors who were interested in collaborating and did apply for those projects and also got them funded. So and that gives me my last lesson, which is more important in a changing business support system, to make new policy, because new policy was all over in Denmark, or to make new projects. And we decided that the best way to show the policymakers that green policy change is needed is to make projects that work. So hopefully we're not in goal yet, but hopefully these projects will be a showcase for how to do green business development. And lastly, for those of you, mostly project partners, who have been following the Danish redesign of the business support system, I have a small slide on what has happened up until now. We have now 6 regional business hubs functional. They have embedded the Danish Innovation Fund, the Growth Fund, and the Trade Council in their regional offices. So now every company in Denmark, SME company, can go to a business hub and meet people from the business support system, but also meet people from the Innovation Fund system, growth funding, and also export services. The business hubs are by far the leading actor in attracting new structural fund projects. They are participating or leading the majority of the projects. Almost 90% contain business hub entities. So that's interesting, and that was also a part of the redesign, to have what would you call it? Very strong regional actors to span the whole business support system, and that it seems that's have been working. And then just last month, the minister consolidated the new cluster design in Denmark. So we have 14 new clusters, which overtook the 70 plus clusters we had before. Different kinds of food clusters and so on have now been consolidated into one food cluster, for example. And though they will be the major competitor for the structural fund projects, along with the universities, for the business hubs. So that will be the next part of the history of the Danish business support system, how this competition will evolve, or if it will lead to more collaboration or more separate actors. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Jonas. As I mentioned in the beginning of the conference, we are 10 partners in this project, and now we will try something interesting, and that is a panel discussion with the remaining 6 partners that hasn't presented yet. So I will leave the floor to Olof here, who will moderate the panel discussion.
Thank you. So, I will first start how to do a small thing first. There they are. Yes, we are now continuing to look into the different regions, and I have these 6 beautiful people around, and I will soon take away this picture. But anyway, these are the guys who will help you in understanding how you can actually benefit in different regions and having projects like this and focusing on eco-innovation. So maybe we can just start by that. We start up in the upper left corner, and Kostas, if you introduce yourself and then they go to right and then go further in these 6, so we know who you are. Please.
Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of the University of Western Macedonia in Kozani, to the north part of Greece. It's nice to see you all again in this very interesting eco-innovation let's say conference. I would like to speak about our experiences through the project and what were the benefits and what the cashiers is at the end of the day, like we say in Greece. So I'll be happy to present this kind of experiences and what we're mostly, what we're extra proud of for our conference. I may do it now, or you would like to introduce all
I want to introduce everyone in the panel, so please,
okay.
Just a short introduction now. So Charlotte, next.
Yes, thank you. You want me to continue?
No.
No, okay.
Charlotte, the microphone.
Yeah,
excuse me, sorry.
No problem.
Good morning. My name is Charlotte Wright. I am the advisor for technological innovation at the Ministry of Economic Affairs in the state of Hessen. This is in the heart of Germany, also in the heart of Europe. Yeah, we are one of the leading high-tech regions in Europe, and Hessen is a key location for environmental technologies. And yeah, we had the pleasure to be part of the super project as an associated partner, and I'm happy to talk with all the participants in this panel discussion.
Ignacio.
Okay, hello everyone, and I hope you can hear me well. I'm Ignacio Uzquiza. I work for the Business and Financial Advisory Department at the Business Innovation Center of Murcia. We are located in the southeast of Spain. We are a technology-based incubator with the main objective of fostering entrepreneurship and the development of new projects. But we are also one of the actors of the super system in our region, and we also take part on different projects as a super project in the European level, but also in national and regional level, looking for stimulated innovation in our region, just to make a real impact in our territory. And it's just a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Steph.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Stef Roel. I work for the Economic Board of Utrecht, which is a triple helix organization, which means that it's a cooperation between companies, knowledge institutions, and politics. I'm responsible for financial instruments and have been involved in the super project from the start.
Thank you. And Ilona?
Hello, my name is Ilona Platonov and I represent Vidzeme planning region, which is region in Latvia. We are partners of this project and we also were doing a lot of activities and actually gained very valuable contacts and have now continued cooperation with a number of partners as well.
Thank you. And finally, Tautvydas.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tautvydas Pipiras from Lithuania Innovation Center, the organization which works as a advisory for business and also a policy advisors. And I'm happy to be here and share our experience, how collaboration helped us to boost our innovation support ecosystem, and also to describe how Lithuanian business and government is taking eco innovation very seriously.
So as you all see, we have a very competent and broad panel, and I think we could talk for hours, but we will only talk for half an hour, so don't worry. And first, Steph, you were working in the province of Utrecht, and so if you would think about what you have been doing in this project and in the action plans and so on, what would you say what are you most proud of?
Well, actually, the fact that we have been able to achieve, to guarantee or to create long-term support for those eco-innovative SMEs in our region. We have created 2 new funds, a proof of concept fund, which is for innovative SMEs that are really early stage and that still need to create a proof of concept. So this is important to get the pipeline of new SMEs going. And next to this, we also created a participation fund, also for innovative SMEs that already have a business concept and that are looking to roll this out into the real market. And we think that both funds are really important in order to help support those eco-innovative SMEs. The total size of this funding is around 15 million, and we see at this stage we see it as a starting point, and probably there will be commitment to raise more money when these funds are fully deployed. So I think this is quite a nice result, and the super project was actually very instrumental for us to be able to do this, because it provided the knowledge, but also the project was running in line with the political processes that were happening in our region. So actually it was a little bit of luck in the timing that the super project was exactly running parallel to this political process. But since this was running parallel, we could make use of it in a really good way. So this is also why I think we were able to create these 2 funds and make this happen.
Thanks. And Kostas, you were so eager in starting and talking about what you're proud of, so please tell us now.
Okay, thanks. What is absolutely clear for us that also really worked during the project lifetime is that we had the chance, and this happens for the first time in our region, that is a smaller region in Greece, to discuss with all interested regional stakeholders and directly for a clear, we may say, policy instrument as eco-innovation is. Since innovation, mostly in research and R&D projects, is being considered so far mostly as a full tool, usually not divided in subtopics. So we had the chance to work with other regions that are following specific activities to support eco-innovative businesses and to fund initiatives directly on this subtopic, let's say. It was also clear and of course expected that each partner is working in many different directions to support eco-innovation activities and initiatives based on the specific profile of the regional business ecosystem. We took our efforts were concentrated to take the best transferable parts of the project good practices and influence our policy instrument, our selected policy instrument, to support eco-innovation activities under specific sectors, SMEs development plans, mostly for those who are willing to scale up, for SMEs willing to increase their economic and financial results. It was not easy to involve all of our stakeholders and the managing authority on this, since our enterprises are almost 95% micros and SMEs, and they are still facing problems because of the remaining economic crisis in Greece, and of course more recently the pandemic that is in the second full progress these days. In any case, we are proud that eco-innovation actions are more friendly now to our business environment, and the new regional operational program is expected to include more references on them for the years to come up to 2030. Our managing authority opened a call to fund the regional innovation smart specialization strategy sectors and included in the eligible budget those that were related with eco-innovation activities. Almost 50% of the projects that were finally approved include this kind of activities, and these projects are already being implemented. So we are really looking forward to continue working with this network, the super network in the region and the University of Linköping. Thank you. I hope I was on time.
There's a lot of time. Tatvidas, in some way you represent the whole country, which is also very interesting. So, and perhaps not visible for everyone, but sometimes it's a region of the country, but in your case it's you stand for the Lithuanian Innovation Center as such for the whole country. So please, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, so the short answer would be that we witnessed the increased number of companies that were applying for the funding dedicated for implementation or the creation of eco-innovation. So that was the main goal that we managed to achieve. But also it is important to mention the measures that help us to achieve all of this. So first of all, it was that international learning, the good practices that we saw in this project, in super project, that we applied in our own innovation ecosystem. So prior to this project, we had financial measures that gave support for eco-innovations, but always the devil is in the details. So we used all the tools provided by this project to evaluate what companies were really looking for when they were looking at these kind of innovation measures, and how it could help them to improve their operations or their competitive advantage. And the thing that we examined, that our economy is really small and it's open economy, so companies export a lot, so they saw eco-innovation as the thing that could improve their competitive advantage for their company, for their products. So we try to examine how we can improve those eco-innovation measures that would be more favorable for those countries that are for those companies that are exporting to other countries. So we introduced or extended the list of activities that could be supported by by eco-innovation measure. So right now companies could get support for the certification and labeling of their products. Also, they can get innovation audits for their operations and for their products. And all these small steps just increased the attention of the companies, that they saw that this eco-innovation measure could really help them to scale into other markets and to improve their competitiveness. So since the initiation of these steps, we witnessed the increased number of companies that were applying and submitting for the innovation support schemes. So that was main achievement, I think, from this project.
Thanks a lot. I think all of you have mentioned or touched upon that what you have been able to do as like spin-outs from working with this project is to create funds and help in setting up funds and making SMEs applying for money and so on to develop things. And I think it was in the Guardian the other day. There was an article written about the COVID restarting Europe, restarting the world after the COVID crisis. And it was a bit disappointing because most money were spent on industries focusing non-renewables and very dependent on fossil fuels. In some way going in the wrong direction when it comes to eco-innovation. Have you any ideas how could perhaps we or you influence I would say then it becomes mainly the politicians perhaps, to be more brave and not forgetting all the good things that you have started in your home regions now when it comes to eco-innovation and boosting that as part of a COVID restart? You were not prepared for that question.
No, but I think it's also in line with the question I asked to Ken. How can we be more brave, and how can we make sure to keep on investing and putting public funds available for those important innovations and the creation of these new business cases? And I think, well, there's maybe two lines at the present, like people who keep on supporting the old economy, so to say, and this is maybe due to the fact that this is also what they know. This is what they always have been doing, so it's quite easy to keep on doing the same thing. And there's also, I think, a big stream. I wouldn't even call it an understream at this moment, that is willing to start supporting those new business cases that work towards the systemic change that we are looking for to make this place, our world, sustainable. And I really think that it's important to share ideas between each other, and that is also the good thing about this project, that we can, well, pick the best practices from each other, pick the best ideas, and build upon those ideas, and avoid spending money on things that others have already found out. So we need to be smart, we need to use those best things, and we need to accelerate by sharing all the ideas that are out there. And this is what I think has also happened in the Super Project. We have been talking a lot, sharing ideas, but by taking into account or using those best practices, you are making it easier to create good instruments. And when you have a good instrument, it's my opinion or my belief that there will be political commitment for this as well. This is what I found in our region. When you propose something that is good, that makes sense, there will be commitment, and the next step is that you will find the money to create the instrument or to create the support action. So this is the way I think we should work. And hopefully this is the start. And like Ilona said, many interesting contacts have been established, and we are already working and building upon those contacts also outside of the setting of the super project. So for me, working together, sharing ideas, taking best practices, it is working.
Thanks. Ilona?
Well, I think we are returning back to some of the elements which you mentioned, Olof, in your presentation, that very often eco-innovations do not pay back so fast. They have a bit greater risk in the business models, and especially in this time in terms of uncertainty, when you can't predict, you want to get your investment back as soon as possible. So you're motivated, especially now when somebody was investing for 30 years and now COVID changed something. If you did large investments in some greener but still more expensive investment in hospitality, for example, and now you're facing the COVID, you might again have a pressure of, okay, why would I? But I think we need to understand that actually that one of the best practices which we learned, at least we did it, that we actually, for small and medium-sized companies, it's much more beneficial to have not dedicated instrument for eco-innovation, but more have education about what benefits they have from eco-innovating. For example, like having audits, having some advisory available so that they can evaluate the long-term benefits, social benefits, and sometimes they commit to lower profit margin just in order to get sustainability arguments for them. And so one of the things which we learned was actually that we might not advise our government to make specific instruments to the eco-innovation, just because small and medium-sized companies are not capable of taking many instruments. So they will choose some, and if that eco is more supported by points that you can get higher support, but in the same instrument, which helps you with the profitability. It also is something that might be helpful to really help these companies to eco-innovate, not to develop a specific instrument, because then they get lost in all this wide system.
Thanks. So I think you can stay unmuted, Ilona, because I was going to ask you, I think Steph made a very good argument in some way that we should continue to have projects like this, that the learning, the international learning and so on is important, and collecting good examples and so on. But, and I hope that there are people in the audience who actually are starting to think, oh, maybe we should do something like this in our home region. So what would be your advice for those people trying to set up something?
If we think about supporting eco-innovation, then the one thing which I just mentioned was about include that into existing support mechanisms as additional points, as additional stress elements, so that people every time think, oh, am I eco-innovation? Am I getting a couple of more points? That's one of the kind of, if you always ask about eco-innovation, this is one thing. The other thing is the public sector can make a major efforts in actually showing up or publicly raising awareness of the successful eco-innovators. And that plays a major role in their business development case afterwards. When you recognize them, when you congratulate them. And the third thing, probably I would advise the approach which you have scientifically proven about how to evaluate the intermediaries was really, really good. And I think it has also helped Latvian public service, because we presented it several times to different institutions when they were looking at how to assess, how to develop the regional support. And it has helped us also to assess that actually there has to be more support on the regional level. And you showed also our graph that the regional support was really minor and only the national and international support is being considered. So it is something that you use a proper system of evaluation where you stand for. It should be actually the first step, and then you can move forward. But right now we're also ready to move forward. We would be happy to apply to some research project, Horizon maybe, to look at, and there are plenty of Horizon support available, so we would be happy to collaborate with the partners as well. So
great. Charlotte, you said you're from a very high-tech region of Europe. So how would you advise people? You're muted.
I'm not learning, sorry. Yeah, well, as I said, in Hessen, we already had a basis, so there was already something going on, and then when we entered the super project, anyhow, we could like gain a lot of insights and fruitful discussions and debates, and so we did not start from the scratch when we entered the program, but based on the lessons we learned from the project, we have broadened the scope of an already existing research and development program. And my general advice when starting eco-innovation support systems is to work with an already existing network. So there definitely in all the regions, there are certain stakeholders which are already in the field, and really try to get insights from them and get them to together as soon as possible or as early as possible in the process of establishing a project. So really like get them involved in the planning process of funding in eco-innovations, and also maybe run pilot projects in the beginning. So to get some data and then to scale it up. Another advice is also to what helped us a lot was to build up a strong brand. So we already had funding project PIOS, and we really made it known, because it's like one main challenge for us was to find the right target group, and it helps to establish a strong brand and use synergies of already existing projects.
Thanks. And Ignacio, in the sunny Spain.
Well, I think, well, this idea, I think we have been through during the whole, meeting, but I like what Ken and you, Olof, mentioned before, like it's about connecting people. And I think Charlotte has just said it again, but we think based on our experience in the project that it's critical and it is essential, the collaboration between different actors on the regional level, but also it's important to place the SMEs in a really good position. Maybe because our day-to-day work on, we think that we should be very close to the SMEs needs with a very hands-on approach, in order just to develop and to create measures which overcome their barriers. I mean, it's important to turn SMEs barriers into drivers. And this is what we learned on the framework of the project, that we realized that a lot of companies that we were in contact with, they didn't know much about eco-innovation, the benefits or the potential of eco-innovation. So we thought that we had to go one step behind and work on increasing their awareness, their knowledge about what eco-innovation was. So if we wanted the SMEs for adopting eco-innovation solution, we think that we should work with a common goal between all the actors here in our region, that is a small region, and we should work all together. And we should be aligned to adopt new measures, new initiatives, new programs, just to make a real impact in the territory. And this is what we learned. Just the collaboration, just the collaboration between people and to create a strong network.
Thanks. I think we have a very interesting question in the chat that I will take. It's from Rose O'Connor. Asking what mechanisms do you use to ensure your interventions are addressing the specific challenges SMEs face? And I also see that Ilona already written a an answer, but maybe you cannot take that as in spoken also, and then it's open for anyone in the panel to answer that. How do we know that we actually are helping SMEs what we actually want to have? We help.
Well, yeah, first of all, we address the need and then trying to understand the needs, especially now during COVID crisis. Some of our municipalities held even weekly calls with some of the local entrepreneurs just to get heard what's going on and how really can be helped right now. We organized in response specific webinars about how to adapt to the circumstances for hospitality industry, how to use marketing, developed a platform on how to move forward. But this is just returning to COVID crisis. But in general, we provide higher support level to SMEs. It's normally you would have a lower support, and even EU level support is always saying, okay, if you are a medium-sized company, you'll have like 50% co-funding. If you're a small-sized company, you will get 70% of the co-funding. We look at what costs we might cover, just sharing the risk to a higher extent. Because for smaller company, and it depends on which of the risks you want to mitigate or what type of challenges you want to help them overcome. Because for external markets, we have a number of EU-wide instruments like the European Enterprise Network, which again can help with some assistance. So it's a question of which of the specific challenges you want to help to mitigate at the present moment, because you can't do it all. You can never do it all. You have to address specific needs.
Someone else in the panel who want to comment on that? Steph, you have been allocating a lot of money to the SMEs in your region, for example.
Yeah, I had a bad connection when the question was asked. So can you please?
The question is, how do we know that we actually are helping SMEs with what they really need help for?
Well, I think also what Ilona said and wrote down also in the answer in the chat box. I think there's only one way to really know this, and that's to keep in contact. It's really, really important to have a good network and that you are able to know what is happening in society, but much more importantly, what are the questions and the needs of those SMEs. So having a good network, being around the SMEs is, I think, the most important in order to make sure that the instruments that you are employing, whether it's financial or other sorts of instruments, they need to address the problem of those SMEs. So keeping in contact and being flexible also with your instruments is really, really important.
If I may add, actually, I remember one thing which we learned already over years of supporting SMEs is you have to intentionally reach out to some of the SMEs which are not going to you, because there is a group of companies which are mainly lobbying for support all the time. Oh, and I see how people are nodding. We are all facing. There are some businesses whose business case is get support from the state. And we want to reach out to those whose business case is to bring value to the customer and support them in their activities. So you need to kind of, okay, you have to be polite and also talk with the ones which are lobbyists and which are mainly addressing, okay, can you give me this subsidy and can you give me that type of subsidy? But always look at that you don't really co-fund operational costs that much. You have to look at the investment or some risky R&D costs, but not the operational. Like subsidies is probably the worst support type, which still EU sometimes does, and but this is kind of, you have to choose whom you listen to. You have to select people from different backgrounds, also those who are not, like, I think it was good that we were mentioning the people who are not benefiting from the support. Sometimes we have very good innovative companies which have never used support, and then you should go and speak with them why.
It relates a lot to what Jonas was asking when I presented, and also it's easy to always go to the usual suspects and work with the same guys all the time. So
May I also add something, Olof?
Yep, absolutely.
Regarding the mechanism that each partner, each region is using, let's say to check what is happening in real business and what is happening behind the office. So if we really need to follow the SMEs that are really innovating, eco-innovative and innovative in general. So we need to have a supporting structure, not only to count some indicators that are followed by the managing authorities, but also, like Ilona said, to follow the SMEs directly, because sometimes they don't use any funds coming from the European Union or national funds to be innovative or to produce new green products or services. So what we need is to have people to speak in often with businesses, with researchers or questionnaires, or even by call. There are not too many innovative industries or businesses in our small regions. So if we need to follow their expectations and to fulfill them somehow with the support of the public money or the European Union money, then we need to very closely be in touch with them, not occasionally, and not ahead the operational program preparation or the smart specialization strategy updates. So in our region, we have one supporting structure since this year, and we hope that the next years to come, we will have more details on the results of initiatives and programs, projects, whatever.
Thanks. And continuing on this question about fulfilling the SME needs and so on, I also believe that a lot of SMEs, they don't really know what they should ask for. So you also have to be challenging them when you reach them and talking about what can actually be a benefit for you. And that's perhaps not already something that we have formulated before. It's time to round up this panel discussion. I have a final task for you. It will be like a game. I will ask you a question, and you can answer that. You can only answer that by saying one word. And you're not allowed to say the same word as someone else has said. And I will start by the order that you are on my screen. So that's the only. So it will be in some way randomized. So my question is, in one word, what is the benefit of collaborating with our regions on this topic? Kostas, one word.
Surprise.
Surprise. Ilona. Ilona. I don't hear you, Ilona.
Friendships.
Friendship. Tatvidas.
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Ignacio.
Enrichment.
Enrichment. Steph.
Inspiration.
And Charlotte.
2 words, but new impulses.
Impulses, new impulses. Okay, we make it into one word. I think those surprise, friendship, knowledge, enrichment, inspiration, new impulses. I write like a doctor. Yeah. I think, aren't they really, really nice words? And good way of finalizing a nice panel. And as I said, I think we could have talked for hours. But thank you for your participation. And the only thing we have left now is actually to round up. And if there are more questions, more open discussion.
Olof, can I ask one question to you, if it's possible?
Definitely.
Yes. Are your expectations from the project and the partners fulfilled, as you are an academic partner? Was the approach of the university really connected with the approach of people working directly with SME support? And the question is also for wisdom.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Kostas, and I think first of all you have to understand what kind of academics you have in front of you. I have built my whole career on collaboration and co-creation of knowledge. That's like keywords or key issues for what I'm doing. And I know that Wisdom is on the same track. He is better into to theories than I am, but so on. So from that said, our basis for doing these things in the super project, they came from a research project called SHIFT, where we studied support systems from different angles. What the super project gave us was the opportunity to test the ideas and fine-tune them. And then we also have got a very, very rich empiric basis for, we are writing now 2 different articles. One is about this, the SME perceived effectiveness of support for eco-innovation. And the other one is about the self-assessment tools and how it can be used to stimulate activities in regions. So from that said, I would say that it has been very, very rewarding for us to being here. And it has also been a pleasure because you have actually also contributed a lot and have made us rethink. You have been very active in rethinking the SME study, in rethinking the self-assessment tool and so on. And it's a pity that the COVID doesn't allow us to meet in person, but I think there are positive things there as well, because I think the diffusion of the knowledge will be even better doing this online actually. We have had 135 people registering for this event, which I think it's a very, very good number. So from that said, we also would like to thank you a lot from participating regions. Without you, we would have been nothing.
And I'd like to add a bit that we are very much happy that the tools and the knowledge that we developed has come to actual use, because that is one of the challenges that we face as researchers, that the things that we do only stay in the academics and don't come into practice. But through these projects, many of the things and the self-assessment tool that we have developed has actually been used in the regions and has gone to influence your action plans and sometimes policy. So we are very happy for that. And that is the kind of impact and the kind of research that we look forward to doing. And that is what we should be doing actually in the society, to impact and see real change, not just writing out academic articles and doing things for ourselves, but for the society who funds us and supports us as well.
So what we would like you to do now, spend a few minutes. The first is that I think we can actually do only the first question here. To get some kind of input again using Menti and answering the question, or what are your key insights from today? And then I think we can take the specific questions, we could take them in the chat and in the, like you unmute. But if you just take a few minutes, it's the same code, it's the same menti.com, and answer the first question. We would be glad to see that.
I will try and answer as well.
So I think we can start looking into, this is what you answered in the morning. What are your expectations for the day? And the most common word was inspiration, followed by good practices and learning. And then there are a lot of different things, but I think goes in almost into the same same, if you can say so, headings or theme and so on. Some were a bit curious on knowing more about the circular economy, and I think you learned a lot from listening and discussing with Ken. And we hope that you have been inspired by the partners and the presentations that you heard during the day. So if we now go down to what you have key insights, it's still engagement is key, cooperation works, successful project, future collaboration, results in all regions, inspiring network, complex adaptive system, cooperation, building networks. I want to do a similar thing, I guess, in Denmark. We still can learn. Engagement is key. Reach out for SMEs, systems thinking, as expected. So it's still building. That's a funny thing with Menti. Are you satisfied, Sigrid?
Yes, very satisfied.
Yes, yeah. People have got the insights you wanted. Yeah?
Yes.
Good. So I will stop sharing and then we can take it at the end as well.
Yeah.
So, any open questions? We have a few minutes left. To us or to someone who has presented? I don't believe we have Ken around anymore, but social network analysis in DK. Yeah, you want to do the thing that we have done in Östergötland.
If you could share some insights on that. I've worked with the tool earlier on in a company, but that would be very interesting to get a hold on how deep the actors are involved and so on. So that I would be very much interested in learning more about that.
We used 2 master thesis students who did this as a master thesis. So we interviewed a lot of people and asked for how they collaborated. And from that, they created this. But there is a master thesis that we can share. And hopefully there is a conference paper as well. And we are developing that into a regular research paper as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I also ask another one?
Yes.
You have to mute me, not permanently forever, if you want me to stop speaking. Sigrid, you're smiling.
I'm prepared.
As always. So if you could turn back time, which part of the methodology would you have replaced or change or modify or even add a new one for even better results?
To me, I would say that the first thing you do, you regret the most in some way because you haven't really learned what to ask for. So I think that we could have got more information from our SMEs in the SME surveys. It was a really good start to have it, but it's a continuous process. Maybe 140 companies sounds a lot, but if it is, then it's in 10 regions, it becomes 14. Okay, so how representative are those interviews? But anyway, it helped us, I would say, in setting up the project and the activities and so on. But to me, I think that is what I would like to elaborate a bit on if we could turn back time in that sense. But I don't think we should turn back time. I think we have done great stuff, and now it's time to do more things based on what we have learned.
Yes, and on the side of the self-assessment tool, I think because we had a very iterative approach and we discussed a lot with the regions and what you did, it helped us to develop a tool that was quite close to practice. So that we are quite satisfied with. Something that we could do in the future is actually to look at the regions and see how they are changing, because this study was done in like almost 2018. And currently the regional support systems are developing and they are changing and new actors are coming in. Others are becoming more and more important. So this historical perspective and how things change over time could be interesting to look at and see how to work better with eco-innovation.
A question from the audience, if there are some. So otherwise it's time to round up, and I leave the floor to you, Sigrid, then to take over again.
So thank you everyone for participating. We are very happy that so many of you wanted to join this conference, and we hope we filled your expectations. It's been several hours now, and I'm very thankful for staying and for listening so actively and asking a lot of questions. Obviously, we are very sad that we can't meet in person, the partners, but I think this was a good solution. So thank you everyone, and stay in touch, and you can find our contact information to all the partners on our project website. Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Inte de lämna. Låta dem lämna först. Så du ser det.